Hello everyone. Today I am full of pleasure in order to demonstrate my teaching related to part 1 language. Chapter 1, what is language? I would like to start from the definition of language. What is language? Actually, according to Lawman Dictionary of Contemporary English, 5th edition in 2009, language is defined as the following text. Language is a system of communication by written or spoken word which is used by the people of a particular country or area. I would like to go further into the definition of language as well, defined by Pinker. Language is a complex, specialized skill which develops in the child spontaneously, without conscious effort or formal instruction. It is deployed without awareness of its underlying logic, is qualitatively the same in every individual and is distinct from more general abilities to process information or behave intelligently. So from the excerpt from the Pinker, the language instinct here, we could see that Pinker defined language as a natural one, that exposure to language it happened unconsciously, okay? And it doesn't need any formal instruction at school but it happened qualitatively and naturally from one state to another state, and it happened in common for every individual. When we have more definition of language, we come up with one of the synthesis of language that is defined as following. Language is a system of arbitrary, conventionalized vocal, written, or gestural system that enable members of a given community to communicate intelligibly with one another. So this definition can be concise and can be in brief, that it includes different aspects related to language that is used in common, and it allows the member of a community or the group of people that they could use it for the sake of communication with one another through a means of written one, vocal one, or even the gesture. Next, we would go further to the different function or aspect of language. A consolidation of a number of possible definitions of language could yield the following composite definition. We can say that language is a systematic one. Actually, language has its system that it worked. We could ask ourselves that can we have different systems in terms of the language of each nation in the world? Yes, the answer is yes. Each language has its system which governed how it used. Take a look at the language that we have known so far. For example, like English language. We have the rule in order to govern how to use it, verbally or written one. For example, when we create a sentence in English language, normally we can have subject, we can have verb, for example. That is one of the simplified example in order to prove that language has its system. You cannot use language in English whatever you like because it can be without awareness with the people whom we communicate with. Not only English, but the other language as well, that it has its system. Another one, language is a set of arbitrary a symbol. For this one, we could say the communication from arbitrary symbol with agreement of a group of people living in the same community or society. In order to reach the compromise for the understanding of agreement from a group of people, normally we need to have the linguistic form and the concept which signify or which can be used in order to identify from the linguistic form. That's why we may ask ourselves that, so how can we define one of the word like terrible, booked, dog, cat, because it has its meaning. When you go to check the meaning from dictionary like book, okay, it has its meaning. When you go to check the vocabulary like cat, you can see its meaning as well. So cat, book we call linguistic form or signifier. But for concept, this is the definition, this is the meaning that it signify or it represent. We could see that because of these, we let everyone in order to agree, and then we take it for granted, and then language it become a set of arbitrary symbol that we use in our community. The symbols are primarily vocal, but maybe also be visual. Actually, a language, okay, is it can be used in the mean of vocal or visual, that we use it for the purpose of communicating idea with other people. Okay, when you speak out, right? When you communicate verbally, we have our intention, we have our idea that we want to transfer, that we want to express it toward the other people. That's why the symbol in language can be with the collectivity of one of the intended concept that you want to tell. The symbol have conventionalized meaning to which they refer to as well, because the meaning of the language can be different from one to one, but actually we have our concept in principle that what do you establish for your meaning and what do you want to refer to. Let's go on with what is language again. Language is used for communication. That is true, right? And language apparatus in a speech community or culture that we use in a particular area, even a country, okay, or even in any society. Also, language can express a sense of culture as well, that we have from one to another one, from one area, from one location to another. That's why the culture can be one of the means that the people they sharpen their language that is different from another one. Language is essentially human, also possibly not limited to human. On the top of this, we just want to refer to the ones that we apply or we use language, and this is about the people. Language is acquired by all people in much the same way. Language and language learning both have universal characteristics. That's why all of the people, we must have language in order to interact with each other. And sometimes the language can be used universally, that we have something in common in order to share. That's why we can make the balance in terms of the translation from one language to another language, that it share the same characteristic. Or even nowadays we have the global language that everyone know, it is English, for example. What does it mean to know a language? When you know a language, you can speak and can be understood by other people who know that language as well. For example, you use your mother tongue, like our first language is Khmer, right? So you can communicate and you can let other people mention your Khmer language and your meaning. This means that you have the capacity to produce sounds that signify certain meaning, and to understand or interpret the sound produced by the other as well. So sound is one of the things, but when we can understand the sound, this is what you can signify the linguistic form from what you are saying, or from what you get from anyone who is talking with you or communicating with you. What does it mean to know a language continue? Therefore, part of knowing a language means knowing what sound or signs are in that language and what sound are not. For example, like here, okay, like these and that, okay. This is in, I believe, in French language, okay. So we have the sound differently, that it allows user in order to differentiate how can we pronounce in terms of its pattern. For example, if you want to use demonstrative pronoun, you can use these, okay, for anything which is closer to you, and singular noun, and that, right, you can pronounce that as another demonstrative pronoun refer to singular thing which is not close to you. But how can we know we pronounce in such a way? Because when you pronounce that, you can understand that what does it mean, and this as well. It also means knowing which sound may start a word and follow each other. For example, when you see this word, okay, you may come up with yourself, and you may be wondering how can you pronounce it. Okay, so you may pronounce necroma or enchroma, right? Because you see letter N here, you just pronounce N single in single way, and then chromas the last one. Okay, so you pronounce enchroma, but you can pronounce necroma as well. Okay, that's why it has its way of pronunciation already, that it's set for one of the word. That is one of the special thing about the language, that you know when to what to start, what to follow, and how to end it. Knowing a language means also knowing that certain sequences of sound signify certain concept or meaning, vocabulary. For example, like toy and boy, okay? You cannot create O and Y lastly, okay, in whatever you wish, okay, because normally when you use the noun, right, for the noun creation with O and Y lastly, it refers to something which characterize or belong to the childhood of, like boy, you see, letter B, O and Y, boy, toy, it belong to the boy, right? But for moi, it impossible. A glare, gleam, glitter, glossy, etc. Okay, Most of these words you can see that it starts with G and L, alright? But when we check out their meaning are not far different. We talk about the bride or sons, right? But they just a bit different in terms of the contextual meaning. Okay, you can check up this. Alright. Happily, okay, disable, um, communism, rewrite. Okay, they have the similar function like the example that I have just shown you. So it means that for the sound of the word, it could signify the concept of meaning that let you be familiar, or you can notice as well. Knowing a language also means being able to produce new sentences never spoken before and to understand sentences never heard before as well. You cannot buy a dictionary or phrase book of any language with all the sentences of the language because the number of sentences in a language is infinite. For example, this is the house. This is the house that Jack built. This is the more that lay in the house that Jack built. This the dog that worried the cat that killed the rat that ate the more that lay in the house that Jack built. Old man came. A beautiful old red round Russian wooden dining table. So we could see that you can create a sentence whatever you wish, okay, with the word and put together to become the sentence. Anyway, you need to make sure with the form, right, with the meaning that you created, is it correctly in terms of the grammar, in terms of the function of the meaning or not. In addition to knowing the word of the language, linguistic knowledge includes this rule for forming sentences and making the kind of judgment about those sentences can be very important. And this is the concern of grammar, like what I have just shown you, okay? You can create as many as sentences that you like, but the question is that are they acceptable in order to mention and grammatically correct or not? Like the further example, right? John kissed the little old lady who owned the shaggy dog. Who owned the shaggy dog? John kissed the little old lady. John is difficult to love. It is difficult to love John. John is anxious to go, etc. That the sentence may be understandable or may be wrong in terms of the grammar as well. Now, let me move to another point about language again. It's aspect of language. Actually, it is difficult to define simply because it is an object which has representation in terms of language. That's why language is consisted of different aspects, like what you can see on the list here. The first one, language can be seen as a social fact. Second one, language can be seen as a psychological state. Language is a set of structure. And another one, language is as a collection of output. I will go further in order to explain you more about the four aspects of language here. Now take a look at the first social fact of language. Now we get the first view of language. Actually, we have the existence in each individual head, but not complete in any individual. That's why we could see a virtual collection of individuals in order to create or to make up the language in community. For this concept, we would see that language can be the collectivity of everyone in order to reach one agreement in terms of the language. That's why language that we use in one community, in one society, in one country, it should be seen as the social fact that it used across the whole area. Second one, language is as a mental reality. It is assumed to exist in the head of the people, speaking it based on the fact that people have the ability to learn language in general and practice in dealing with a language. For this, we believe in the cognitive or in mental aspect, everyone, that it's due to the fact that we presume in advance to be true already that everyone or every person you are equipped with one of the marvelous capability that you have ability to learn the language, that it happen naturally. Okay, and for this is inside your head, that language it come from your mental ability, so it work by itself. So your mental ability take care your language. And this one, grammar is a mental entity which represented in the mind and brain of every individual and characterize that individual linguistic capability. That's why you may wonder that, so why everyone has no need to go to school, but you can speak the language, your first language, fluently since you were born. Okay? So from this concept, okay, we believe in your mental entity, that it start or begin in your brain and it functionalize by itself from one process to another process. It is the grammatical system which allows speaker in order to produce the appropriate utterance. I refer to the spoken utterance, so the statement that you produce out when you are communicating with other people. Another one, language is a set of choice or system. In this aspect, speaker can express meaning in many ways, but the words speaker use must be in the order in order to mention or to be understood. For example, like what I told you, that English language has its system that you need to take care with the subject and verb. Okay, so it govern or control, it rule in order to let everyone understand you when you are writing or when you are talking. For example, so kiss the cat or the cat kiss. But in terms of the systematic for the structure, you should not say kiss a cat, right? Because here verb it happened before subject and object. That is wrongly written in terms of the grammar. That's why it again are opposed to the system or the choice that we have created in our language. But it doesn't mean that it's wrong or generalized. Somehow it may be correct in one of the language that we have never known. Okay, because like when we compare Japanese and English, it can be to like extent different as well in terms of the system. That's why we need to be clear and to comprehend comprehensively in terms of its system. Language is an actual set of utterances. Actually, Utterances can be the statement or sentences that you could produce out. You can produce in terms of the speaking, in terms of the writing. Okay? But mostly, speaking it begin first, right? This aspect of language raises the notion or the idea as to whether language deal with utterances or sentences. For utterances, we refer to external language, or we have e-language, and sentences we call I language or internal language. So what are the different degree in terms of this, and it associate differently to what extent between E and I language? Okay, for external or E language, we can call it external manifestation or representation of internal grammar, and it's used in expressing statements socially, phonetically, or logically. That's why we can say that we use language for the purpose of communication with different functions. So you can observe yourself when you use English in order to write any formal letter to anyone for the business purpose. When you use English phonetically in order to communicate with your follower, with your supporter, okay, you want to express the language logically in order to explain, in order to describe about something. That's why it has different function. Anyway, for I language, it is internal. It is individual knowledge for a broader statement or sentence. It can be thought of as grammatical system which allow user in order to express our. I can say that it totally what you have inside yourself. This is your ability to use. This is your knowledge in terms of the sentence governing to use the grammatical system correctly, and then you put it out in a language. Next is language description. Due to its complexities, language, is it worth describing a language? Should it be said that language is a social structure? Language is a mental structure? Language is a set of system? Language is actually produce utterances. For social structure, we refer to when we regard language as a wholesome collectivity that we use together in one society, and we compromise with its structure of application. And mental structure, it can be what we carry in our head. This is our mental ability that it works naturally, it works unconsciously in our head. Our language can be a set of system that we have the system in order to create the new written utterances, for example, or it actually produces utterances as many as possible. It is safer not to describe the language as its language faculty or universal grammar. Linguistic set of function or a general set of cognitive ability to be language user. Yes, that's why language it consists of many theses of different explanations about it. You cannot believe in any aspect of language in solo way, and you don't have other choice. For example, when you believe that language is just mental structure, or it happened in based on universal grammar in our head, or we call language faculty, this can be one of the things, right? That it found and provided internal theory from Noam Chomsky in the previous time, right? ជាយើងឃើញថាសម្រាប់ករណីភាសាគឺត្រូវបានគេយកមកពិភាក្សានៅក្នុងទម្រង់ជាច្រើន ជាលក្ខណៈ structure នៅក្នុងការប្រើប្រាស់ជារួមនៅក្នុងសង្គមជាលក្ខណៈសមត្ថភាពដែលកើតឡើងនៅក្នុងក្បាលឬក៏ខួរក្បាលរបស់យើងដែលវា process នៅក្នុងការអភិវឌ្ឍដោយខ្លួនឯងដែលយើងហៅថា language faculty អូខេឬក៏ជាលក្ខណៈប្រព័ន្ធដែលធ្វើឲ្យយើងដឹងនៅការប្រើប្រាស់ភាសានៅក្នុងការរៀបចំឃ្លាឃ្លោងនៅក្នុងការទំនាក់ទំនងជាដើមចឹងយើងមិនអាច focus ទៅលើណាមួយជាក់លាក់ថាអានេះគឺជា description ល្អបំផុតរបស់ language but all of them can be description or can be hypothesis like this one universal grammar okay it's still hypothesis that whether it's true or not but we cannot reject that it is untrue as well. Now I would like to go further to Langu and Paro. Mr. Scherzer, he said that there are two sides of language. The first one is Langu and another one is Paro. For Langu, it is a part of language that is incomplete in any individual. It is limited individual language knowledge. That's why we need to see the collectivity existence, that it happened homogeneous one. It's underlying abstract system of a language, and we will see the signs and their relationship to one another both in lexicon or vocabulary and combine into sentences to use for communication. That's why for Langu, we believe that everyone can be limited, but we can share from one to one in order to have the collection, in order to have the homogeneous use in our society. That's why I used to show you before about the role of linguistic form and signify or the concept that it represents. So signifier that we have the word form or linguistic form or sound and signify the meaning that it form. So in your society you call duct, okay? So we get the signifier duct and signify the concept that it refer to. It can be the for like creature, for example. So these we put together in combination. We got the signify as duct that we take it for granted to use in the single society or the whole community. That duck is referred to the for like creature somehow, right? How about Paro? Paro, observable in the behavior of individual, is not homogeneous, everyone. Written and spoken language actually use an actual utterance or concrete use of language, or we refer to the actual speech that the speaker produce. Okay? So this is what we can make it out, right? This is what we can express in terms of writing, in terms of the speaking, in terms of our utterance, or we call your performance. The distinction or the difference between Langu and Paro has suffered two major changes later on. The first sub-level has been added. This is norm, okay? For example, the same idea can be expressed in many ways. Our Langu allows us to do so. And when we actually produce, it can be in many utterances. However, according to the norm, we are supposed to say certain things in certain circumstances. Another one is second point. There has been similar distinction before that of competent and performant. The confusing side of which is individual perception of the word Langu and competent by the Scherzer and Noam Chomsky respectively. For Scherzer, Langu can be a system of sign that it needs intervention from signify and signifier, okay, in order to create one word. For Noam Chomsky, Competent, he believed in generative system, or it referred to the mental construction inside the head of every individual. For social linguistics, it deals with language or social factor that involves studying the language of the community and its homogeneity. For Noam Chomsky, linguistics it deals with internal language or I language that it can be compared previously by me at the moment with E language and I language that take over competent and performant, involving the studying of the language potential of individual. This is called universal grammar. This is the mental ability that it takes the language progress of every person. Now, continue with competent and performant. Competent, this is the user actual knowledge of the language. Performant, this is the ability of the user in order to use the language in terms of the spoken and written context. However, this distinction also elicits some criticism. Does user performant really represent user actual competent? Difficult to tell whether a particular phenomenon is performant or competent. That's why we still have the question as further searching about the performant and the competent that it represents or supportive to each other correctly or not. And somehow it's really phenomenon for the aspect of language as well. So to conclude, we can see that for Saussure believe in the social fact that it needs the language to be constructed from everyone to build as a whole community or society. But for Noam Chomsky, he still believes in universal grammar or mental ability that is not E, okay, but it should be I, okay, internal ability, internal knowledge from everyone. Okay, I hope that through this chapter it would give you some input, okay, related to the aspect of a language. So for the coming clip, I'm going to discuss about the component of language that we will have several, such as phonology, syntax, morphology, etc. Thank you very much for your attention. See you soon, everyone.